there's a lot of stigma also about BPD that it's like a woman's disorder. Um, Clearly it's not, we have it's actually believed that it's pretty much equal between men and women. Even if it's not fully diagnosed because of the stigma, which makes it harder to get a diagnosis, I think, for men. But Andre, do you have anything to say about, stigma and how it's affected you? Because a lot of people believe that it's a woman's disorder.
Yeah, and you're quite right. I mean, we'll use the cis men versus women thing at the moment. When I first mentioned the possibility that I had BPD, a lot of people were looking at me quite strangely because, unfortunately, I feel like women are more likely to speak up in the first instance about anything. And it was really hard because I was talking about things and I couldn't find many men to back up this diagnosis. So men, as general, I think it's easier for the BPD symptoms to be attributed towards manliness or toxic manliness. The mood swings or temperament, very much that's celebrated as almost with machismo.
Like anger?
Yeah, anger, all that sort of stuff. In my personal experience, they were never seen as being anything to do with mental health. They were seen as that's just someone who's got almost too much testosterone and can't vibe it off. When I was involved in like sexual behavior, anything like that, it was all attributed to because you're a man, it's got nothing to do with your mental health. So I think in some ways, men struggle when we first have to almost come out about a mental illness because a lot of people say, oh, you're just using that as an excuse to validate your disgusting and sometimes trauma causing behavior in the past. And so when I went back to a few people, even recently, said, look, I've been diagnosed with this thing, I'm trying to do it. They definitely weren't interested because when they looked up online, they were like, I'm definitely not going to get involved with this person again. And I think when you're in a place yourself where your self-esteem is so low, your self-awareness is not great, you tend to try and pluck the closest thing to you. And that happens very much in relationships. So if you think there's something not right with you, as a guy, you often think, well, I can't go and talk to this person or that person because I'm not good enough. And I don't think it's a gender typical thing. I think anyone can relate to that. So what you do attract are people that you feel can handle your craziness. And that's why there's that statement, which I really disagree with, which says, if you can't handle me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best. But what that's perpetuating is that people should have to sit with you in rubbish when they don't.
And I think like the gendered thing isn't just about how, how we treat men and in mental health. It's also about how we talk about women, right? And that's how dichotomies are created. Like, if you think back to like Victorian age, like the women's diseases, things like anxiety, things,
Hysteria.
yeah, hysteria, like anorexia, all these things that were like women's diseases. It's really sold men very short, right? Because like, men are human beings with emotions. Oh my gosh, right? Like, and capable of emotional regulation and capable of emotional dysregulation and capable of having an emotional dysregulation disorder, right? And I think, like you said, like I've seen that in my own family with men in my family. And I come from a culture that is very heavy on machismo. It's celebrated and it's like a sign of power in my culture. And like that's changing too. But yeah, it's interesting to hear you express that because I see that in my family.
It is hard because I've talked to quite a lot of like men of different ages since we've started the BPD Bunch, trying to gauge their experiences, and so many said they can relate to it because we were basically told that because it was almost like funny and hysterical to think that a man would need to go to therapy. Do you know what I mean? It's like, what are you talking about? You're being silly. You're being foolish. So very often, a lot of people, men that do go to therapy, in our cultures, they go, I mean, almost undercover way where yes, they're doing the work, but they can't tell anyone that they're doing the work because of the stigma that's attached to anything that they're going through in the first place.
Well, also to add to that, I think it's difficult because of the belief that women, it's a women's disorder, and men are often misdiagnosed or underdiagnosed, that the men don't even get the access to treatment off of the time, oftentimes, or maybe they're put into a treatment that's not the most effective treatment for them. So it's just really difficult.
So it's something that's perceived as a woman's disorder. It's also something that's perceived among other communities as like a white woman's disorder too.
Yes.
That was another big stigma that and shame that I had to kind of, you know, like I'm supposed to come from a lineage of extremely strong women who put up with this shit, right? And the fact that I was struggling to fall into that, like, you know, Latina woman kind of stereotype because I was like so emotionally like weak sometimes. Like that was a whole other layer of stigma and shame. But yeah, I just wanted to say that.